Episode 5 of The Time Traveler's Wife had some really funny moments. Some awkward moments too, but this one seemed to be funnier than previous episodes. Let's recap. First, I checked the New York Times bestsellers list and Publishers Weekly to see if readers were revisiting this novel by Neffenhager, um, like buying the material again or reading it for the first time. But this novel wasn't on the top sales list, which is surprising. The ratings are decent. Last week's episode 4, captured 245,000 viewers in the 9 o'clock hour. The audience score at Screen Rant and IMDb is in the 70 percentile. So this series is resonating with audiences. At any rate, Gomez and Henry meet for drinks without the girls, and it's uncomfortable. The tension is thick. Henry senses that Gomez wants Claire as much as he does, but he brushes it off because he knows the future. He knows that in the future, they're going to be best friends. Gomez is offended by this and storms off, even though in the previous episode, he's already slept with Claire and confessed his love to her. Henry doesn't know that though. The next scene, Henry and Claire are at the clearing in her backyard. He's sitting for her as she draws a naked picture of him, and he already knows this, so even he's uncomfortable. And he tells her about his first meeting with her parents and how difficult and awkward it was. Flash forward to 20-year-old Claire and 28-year-old Henry. They are on the way to her parents' house so that Henry could meet her parents. They stop at the gas station, and Gomez is blowing up Henry's flip phone to apologize about abruptly leaving during their drinks date. Apparently, they're going to be best friends. Neither of them see how this is even possible because of the tension between them and because they love the same girl. But they'll somehow get over this stump. But this also means that his best friend slept with his wife. And I don't know if Henry will ever know this. But at any rate, they arrive to Claire's house, and they're outside at first in the backyard, and Henry's doing his best to break the ice, but Henry is very uncomfortable because Claire's parents and her brother are a little on the elite, not a little, they're elitists, and they frown upon the fact that Henry's an arbitrary librarian. So they break away from this very awkward meeting with Claire's parents to freshen up for lunch. Henry makes it up to Claire's room for the first time. They bicker for a beat because Claire refuses to allow 28-year-old Henry to go in the backyard. That is a special place for the Henry she loves in this moment, the 33-year-old and 41-year-old Henry that she spent most of her childhood with. So she refuses to let him in the backyard. Then throw her younger sister in the mix, Alicia. Alicia knew about Henry, and now we know that she knew. This whole time, because Henry would be naked in their basement in the winters. So Claire had to tell her younger sister, Alicia, and we also find out in this episode that she told their housekeeper, who's a grown adult. And it's interesting that the housekeeper, she kind of brushes it off like she didn't remember half of the things that uh, Claire told her in her childhood. But it's interesting that in the moment when this child told her that maybe she didn't alert the authorities. But okay. Well, she probably brushed it off, reducing it to a child having an invisible friend, and didn't believe that Henry was real. There are implications that I won't get into about, her not believing a child. But at any rate, then boom, Henry pops up outside of a bar with a gang of bikers, and of course, he's naked. He fights one of them, getting the best of him, but then the crew, the gang, comes out and they're about to gang up on him. Then out of nowhere, Gomez, the lawyer, screeches in to save the day, and I guess this is how they become really tight. He brings clothes for Henry so he knows the rules, and schools the bikers about some cameras up ahead that was capturing the beating, or capturing them about to beat Henry to death. And then we later learn that he was just saying this to get rid of the bikers. Now we see how Gomez and Henry become best friends. And Gomez, in this moment, while they're having drinks, the first time the drinks didn't go well, but this time it is, because Gomez helped save Henry. But he does confess his love for Claire in this moment. And Henry brushes it off again, but then Henry pops back in for lunch with Claire and the family. Before he pops out of this space, Gomez tells Henry to leave a note for Claire about this date. But he's back at Claire's house and his face is bruised from that biker fight. There are just so many awkward scenes in this episode, but they're funny. They found a way to make them very funny. So Henry has bruises on his face, and before he arrives at the table, Claire was telling her family that she and Henry got into a fight, and that's why he's late. So it looks like Claire beat up Henry, that she was abusive to him, and that he's the victim. Claire eventually goes off on her parents for being so judgmental and snooty and elitist. She leaves the table and sprints out to the clearing, her special place. She's there missing old Henry, and it looks different to her. It doesn't look like or feel like it felt when she was a child and she spent time with Henry. Alicia tries to soothe Henry, to assure him that everything's going to be okay, as if he didn't know. But all he wants to do in this moment is mature and be there for Claire. Actually, he wants to be the Henry she longs for. Old Henry, naked Henry in that picture, the Henry she first met, short-haired Henry. We're to believe that this 28-year-old version of the Henry Claire actually loves, that he's changed now that he's cut his hair, that he's mature now. This only days ago he was a womanizer. Okay. But then there's a montage of all the times Claire and Henry spent in this backyard. The episode ends with Henry saying he can be somebody else. Then they slap this romantic music on the scene to convince us that this is an awkwardly beautiful love story. Here's the thing. Next week is the season or series finale. They have so much ground to cover. And next week's episode is 56 minutes long. I don't know if they're going to bring this thing home in that short amount of time. But again, This series is resonating with audiences apparently, and it's not a bad series. I personally think it's 10 years too late, but I am looking forward to next week's episode. I am very interested in seeing how they close out the season. Thank you so much if you stuck around this long. I certainly appreciate you. Please consider liking, commenting, sharing, and subscribing. And until next episode, peace.